So I'm going to jump right into workers' econ, workers' economics. The first thing that you have to consider is, what is a resource? Corporations form themselves around a resource. It might be resource talent, like Microsoft might have a lot of software engineers, and that's their main piece, is to develop that product. It might be corn. A corporate farm will organize itself around fields and grow that corn and sell that corn, negotiate the price of that corn. You can picture this in all types of industries. Well, as workers, one thing that you're doing is selling your labor. So labor unions are a way to organize our resource, our labor. Now I'm going to use that term a lot, labor, and I mean both the physical skill that you bring to the table as well as the mental skill that you bring to the table, because both of those are labor that you give to an employer. Now you're selling that labor, but without a union, you really don't have the opportunity to negotiate the price of that labor. So that's one of the reasons that labor unions are so critical in this country. You can also see from the graph that's up that labor union coverage of workers in the private sector is directly related to the wealth gap. You know that you see in the media quite often that there's a huge wealth gap. The rich are getting richer, middle and poor are getting poorer. The reason for that is that when you go to work, there's not enough labor union participation in this country to ensure that our wages continue to increase at the same rate as inflation and other things, including our productivity. Before the Great Depression and the National Labor Relations Act, which we'll talk about later, labor union participation was very low and the wealth gap was very high. Through the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, labor union participation was very high and the wealth gap was very low. Now we're back to the pre-depression levels of the wealth gap and labor participation. This isn't because labor unions are dinosaurs. This is a concerted effort to ensure that those at the top take as much of the pie as possible and those at the bottom don't. The only way to change that is by forming and joining labor unions. So that's one of the things that we're going to keep in mind as we work through this process.